In Las Vegas, under the blinding floodlights of the MGM Grand, a calm martial artist was about to be mocked on the world stage. A celebration of combat sports turned deadly serious when the most feared boxer alive decided to belittle him before thousands. Chuck Norris wasn't your typical karate icon. For decades, he had been a 6-time world karate champion and elite hand-to-hand combat instructor for U.S. Special Forces, known for defeating entire tournament brackets without dropping a single point. When Mike Tyson dismissed him as just a kicker and squared up inside the octagon, the boxer had no idea he was staring into the eyes of a master who'd spent a lifetime turning restraint into a weapon. Norris answered with flawless control and a strike pulled inches short of destruction. An act of precision that would trigger a cultural firestorm felt far beyond the cage. What began as playful banter between legends would become a global revelation about power and respect. The city that lived on spectacle would never be the same after witnessing Tyson humbled not by violence, but by discipline. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The arena pulsed with raw energy, Las Vegas at its most electric. Every seat filled. Every voice blending into a deafening roar that echoed off the walls like thunder trapped in a mountain canyon. Floodlights beamed down onto the polished octagon at center stage, making the canvas glow an almost unnatural white. Cameras flashed like summer lightning as fans shouted from every corner. Some waved homemade banners, others leaned forward on the edge of their seats, eyes locked on the entrance tunnel. Tonight was special. Legends and legacies, they called it. A high-profile exhibition bringing together icons from different eras and disciplines. Boxers, martial artists, MMA fighters, all under one roof. Not to compete, but to celebrate combat sports in all its forms. At least, that was the official pitch. But the crowd hadn't paid thousands for celebration alone. They wanted spectacle. They wanted the raw electricity that came with gathering warriors in one place. The promotional reels had played for weeks. Witness the greatest fighters across generations share the stage for one night only. Highlight clips of knockouts, kicks, submissions, a montage of decades of fighting excellence. The most prominent faces: Mike Tyson, the ferocious boxing champion whose very name still made opponents flinch, and Chuck Norris, the martial arts master whose calm demeanor belied legendary skill. In the front row, 13-year-old Alex Ramirez sat beside his father, eyes wide with anticipation. The boy had saved allowance for months, begging his dad to bring him to see his hero Tyson, the unstoppable force, the man whose knockout compilations he'd watched 100 times on YouTube. "You think Tyson still got it, Dad?" Alex asked, bouncing in his seat. His father smiled. "Different kind of it now. But, yeah, that man will always have something." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Legends and Legacies, the most star-studded gathering of combat sports excellence ever assembled under one roof." The crowd erupted, the noise physically palpable as it rolled across the arena like a wave. Behind the scenes, fighters and their entourages jostled in the green room, champions from different worlds sharing the same space, some meeting for the first time. Chuck Norris stood quietly near the back, dressed in simple black pants and a fitted navy shirt. At 70+ years, his body still carried the straight-back discipline of his training. He watched, rather than participated in, the loud crosstalk. Nearby, younger fighters snapped selfies with legends, voices rising as they competed for attention. When Mike Tyson entered, the energy shifted instantly. Even among legends, he was something else, the gravitational center around which others naturally orbited. His entourage flanked him like a small army, but he needed no protection. The Tyson aura remained intact decades after his prime. "The man himself!" shouted one of the MMA champions, extending his hand. Tyson grinned, shaking hands, clapping shoulders. His voice, still with that distinctive softness that contrasted so sharply with his fearsome reputation. "Good to see you, champ." A production assistant poked her head in. 5 minutes, gentlemen. We're bringing you all out together." Then individual introductions. The fighters began filing toward the tunnel. Chuck fell in line near the back, content to wait. Tyson, naturally, gravitated toward the front. Out in the arena, the house lights dimmed. A single spotlight appeared at the entrance tunnel. "Dad, it's starting," Alex whispered, grabbing his father's arm. The announcer's voice returned, deeper now, charged with dramatic energy. "Ladies and gentlemen, the moment you've been waiting for. Please welcome the legends." Music thundered through the speakers, a pounding bass-heavy track that made the floor vibrate. The crowd rose as one, screams and applause merging into a wall of sound as the fighters emerged. First came the newer generation MMA champions, boxing title holders, each raising their arms to acknowledge the cheers. Then the older legends, faces that had defined eras, men whose posters had hung on bedroom walls for decades. When Tyson emerged, the arena nearly collapsed under the weight of the response. He bounced slightly as he walked, that familiar movement that had preceded so many knockouts, playing to the crowd with raised fists. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" The chant spread like wildfire. Alex screamed until his voice cracked, jumping up and down. "That's him, Dad! That's him!" Chuck Norris followed moments later, his entrance more subdued but drawing respectful applause, especially from the older crowd and martial arts enthusiasts. He didn't play to the cameras or raise his arms theatrically. He simply walked with measured steps, nodding occasionally at the recognition. The fighters gathered in the octagon, forming a loose semicircle as the announcer began individual introductions. Each man stepped forward when called, waving to the crowd. The energy built fighter by fighter, reaching its first crescendo when Norris was introduced. A true martial arts icon, multiple-time world karate champion, the man whose roundhouse kick became legendary. "Chuck Norris!" Norris stepped forward, giving a small bow to the audience. The applause was warm, genuine, especially from a section filled with karate school students who had come to see their discipline's most famous ambassador. When Tyson's turn came, the announcer barely needed to speak. "The most feared puncher in boxing history. The youngest heavyweight champion ever. Iron Mike Tyson." The reaction was seismic. Tyson stalked forward, shadowboxing briefly, unleashing that trademark smile that somehow made him more, rather than less intimidating. He soaked in the adoration, turning in a slow circle to acknowledge every section of the arena. As the introductions concluded, the fighters began mingling on stage. This was the photo opportunity portion, legends shaking hands, sharing brief words, creating moments that would circulate online within seconds. The announcer encouraged it. "Folks, witness history, the greatest fighters across generations. Together, in one ring." Cameras clicked frantically as different combinations of fighters posed together. In the midst of this orchestrated camaraderie, Tyson found himself standing near Chuck Norris. A photographer motioned them together. "Mike, Chuck, give us one together." The crowd cheered as the two icons moved closer for the photo. Tyson, riding the wave of adoration, draped an arm around Norris's shoulders. They stood side by side, the boxer and the martial artist, different paths to legendary status. Someone handed Tyson a microphone for a reaction. The production team hadn't planned this specifically, but Tyson, with a live mic, was always guaranteed entertainment. The arena quieted slightly, eager to hear what he might say. Tyson grinned, looking sideways at Norris, then out to the crowd. Man, it's something being up here with all these killers. His distinctive voice carried easily. Boxers, wrestlers, MMA, and… He glanced at Norris with a playful but dismissive smile. You know, the kickers too. A ripple of laughter spread through the arena. Tyson continued, warming to his impromptu routine. That's all Chuck here does, right? Just kicks people. He pantomimed an exaggerated high kick that looked nothing like Norris's technical precision. Ain't that right, Chuck? Just a kicker? The laughter grew, spreading outward from the front rows. Tyson was doing what Tyson did best beyond fighting: entertaining. Being unfiltered. Creating moments. Alex laughed along with his father. He's calling out Chuck Norris, Dad. In the ring, Chuck Norris's expression remained neutral. No anger, no offense taken, just that same composed demeanor. But something subtle shifted in his eyes. A sharpness. A focus that hadn't been there moments before. The announcer, sensing entertainment value, moved closer with his own microphone. Chuck, any response to that assessment of your skills? The arena quieted, waiting. Chuck took the microphone, holding it comfortably but not eagerly. When he spoke, his voice lacked Tyson's natural showmanship, but carried a quiet authority. I've been called worse than just a kicker, he said with the hint of a smile. But there's a difference between kicking and knowing when to kick. The response drew appreciative chuckles, but nothing like Tyson's big laugh. The boxer sensed this and doubled down, taking back the conversational momentum. Hey, no disrespect to the kickers, Tyson continued, louder now, feeding off the crowd's energy. But let's be real, one good punch beats any kick, any day. That's why boxing's the ultimate test. You gotta come through these. He raised his fists, triggering another wave of cheers. The announcer, recognizing promotional gold, pressed further. Sounds like we've got a friendly debate about striking supremacy. What do you think? Chuck kicks or punches? Chuck passed the microphone from one hand to the other, considering his response. The arena waited. When he answered, his voice remained measured, but something in his tone made the front rows lean forward. In 40 years of fighting, he said, I've never found that shouting about what you can do proves anything. It's always been about what you do when the moment comes. Tyson laughed, but something flickered behind his eyes, a fighter, recognizing another fighter's subtle challenge. You saying you want a moment, Chuck, right here? He gestured to the octagon around them. The crowd's energy surged, picking up on the sudden tension. The announcer glanced nervously at the production team off stage. This wasn't in the program. But the audience was locked in now, sensing the potential for something unscripted. I'm not looking for moments, Mike, Chuck replied, his calm voice somehow cutting through the growing noise. Never have been. But I've never walked away from one either. The arena erupted. What had started as casual banter had crystallized into something with weight, two legends, two disciplines, suddenly on the verge of an unexpected confrontation. Alex grabbed his father's arm tighter. Are they gonna fight? For real? His father shook his head, uncertain. I don't think that's the plan. But, on stage, the other fighters had backed up slightly, forming an unconscious circle around Tyson and Norris. The production team was gesturing frantically from the sidelines, but the momentum had shifted beyond their control. Tyson, always instinctive, sensed the explosive potential of the moment. His smile widened as he handed his microphone to a nearby fighter and made a show of rolling his shoulders, loosening up. Well then, Chuck, he called loudly enough to be heard without amplification. How about we give these people something special? Little boxing versus kicking. He emphasized the last word to another round of laughter. The announcer stepped in, trying to channel the energy rather than stop it entirely. Ladies and gentlemen, it seems our legends are considering an impromptu demonstration. Remember, this is an exhibition of skill, but no one was listening to the qualification. The crowd was on its feet now, chanting incoherently, smartphones raised to capture whatever came next. In the midst of the chaos, Chuck simply placed his microphone on the edge of the octagon and took 2 steps back. He removed his watch, handing it to one of the younger martial artists beside him. His movements were unhurried, methodical, the same calm precision he'd shown throughout his career. Across from him, Tyson bounced on the balls of his feet, shadowboxing, stirring the crowd into a greater frenzy. His entourage at ringside whooped and hollered, while nearby security staff exchanged uncertain glances. The contrast could not have been more stark. Tyson's kinetic energy versus Norris's stillness. One man feeding the spectacle, while the other seemed almost to stand apart from it. Young Alex stood on his chair for a better view, eyes wide. "Dad! It's really happening!" His father put a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "Looks that way." In the octagon, Chuck finished his minimal preparation and turned to face Tyson directly. The boxer, still bouncing, still playing to the crowd, caught Chuck's gaze and held it for the first time. What passed between them in that moment, only the 2 men knew. But something in Tyson's expression shifted slightly, the showman's mask slipping just enough to reveal the fighter's instinct beneath. He recognized what the crowd, in its bloodlust for spectacle, had missed. The absolute, granite certainty in Chuck Norris's eyes. Not arrogance. Not anger. Just the weathered, unshakable confidence of a man who had spent his life mastering not just techniques, but himself. The arena's roar seemed to dim around them as Tyson's smile faded into something more genuine. The respectful acknowledgement of one predator recognizing another. For a heartbeat, the real stakes clarified between them. This wasn't about a crowd's entertainment or wounded pride. It was about the fundamental question that had always separated fighters from performers. When challenged, do you rise to your nature or fall to your image? The announcer's voice cut through the moment. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we might witness an unscheduled exhibition between 2 of combat sport's greatest icons." As security scrambled to clear unnecessary personnel from the octagon, Chuck and Tyson remained locked in that silent exchange. 2 legends standing at the edge of impulse and discipline, knowing that what came next would be remembered long after the night's planned festivities were forgotten. The crowd's chant solidified into a single word that echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. "Fight! Fight!" The production team huddled at ringside, headsets askew, papers shuffling frantically between them. This unplanned confrontation between icons had derailed their carefully structured program. But the audience's reaction made one thing clear: stopping it would be a greater disaster than letting it unfold. The lead producer grabbed the event coordinator's arm. "Insurance? Waivers? What are we looking at legally?" "They both signed standard appearance releases," the coordinator replied, flipping through his clipboard. "Exhibition demonstrations were covered. But this is exactly that. An exhibition demonstration," the producer cut in firmly. "Make sure the announcer frames it that way. No actual competition language." She tapped her headset. "Jimmy, you copy? Exhibition demonstration only. Guide it that way." Inside the octagon, the announcer nodded almost imperceptibly at his instructions while maintaining his 1,000-watt smile. He raised the microphone again. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears our legends are willing to give us an unscheduled demonstration of their respective arts. Remember, this is purely exhibition. A chance to see different fighting philosophies in motion. The careful terminology did nothing to dampen the crowd's enthusiasm. If anything, the thin veneer of exhibition over what was clearly becoming a genuine challenge only heightened the electric atmosphere. Security had cleared the octagon of other fighters, leaving only Tyson, Norris, and the announcer inside the chain-link enclosure. At ringside, officials hastily conferred with both men's entourages. Tyson's team was animated, gesturing, embracing the moment's potential. His head trainer leaned through the fence. "Keep it light, Mike. Have fun with it. But remember, punches only, nothing crazy. This ain't sanctioned." Chuck's small entourage was calmer. His longtime student Steve approached the fence, speaking a few quiet words that Chuck acknowledged with a single nod. No instructions about technique or strategy after decades together. Such things were unnecessary. Instead, just a simple center, Sifu, stay centered. In the arena's third row, MMA fighter Daniel Cormier leaned toward UFC President Dana White. "You believe what we're seeing? This wasn't planned?" White shook his head, eyes never leaving the octagon. "Not a chance, but I'd pay $1 million cash right now to sign it." The announcer moved to the center of the mat, gesturing for both men to approach. "Gentlemen, we're improvising here, so let's establish some quick parameters. Exhibition only, light contact, demonstration of techniques. 3 minutes sound fair?" Tyson nodded eagerly, still bouncing on his toes. 3 minutes works. I only ever needed one anyway." The comment drew another laugh from the crowd. Chuck simply nodded once, his focus internal rather than on the audience's reaction. "Excellent," the announcer beamed. "We'll have no official judging. No winner declared. This is purely a demonstration of two legendary styles. Is that understood?" Both men nodded. The announcer extended his arms, inviting them to touch gloves or shake hands. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Tyson extended both gloved fists. Chuck reached out with an open hand, clasping Tyson's right glove briefly in a gesture that was neither confrontational nor entirely conciliatory. "Light contact. Gentlemen," the announcer reminded them, then backed away quickly. A production assistant outside the cage held up 3 fingers. 3 minutes on my mark. 3, 2, 1. An electronic tone sounded through the arena, cutting through the crowd noise like a knife. The exhibition had begun. Tyson immediately shifted into his signature stance, head low, shoulders hunched, hands high to protect his face while allowing him to explode forward with hooks and uppercuts. He started moving laterally, cutting off the octagon with the ring generalship that had defined his career. The message was clear. Boxing ring, or octagon. He would control the space. Across from him, Chuck settled into a more upright stance, karate-based, but modified over decades to incorporate elements from multiple disciplines. His hands were lower than Tyson's, his posture more elongated, creating distance rather than closing it. The crowd, momentarily hushed when the tone sounded, began rumbling again as the two legends circled each other. Smartphone lights dotted the arena like stars as thousands recorded the moment. Tyson, true to his nature, moved first, a quick, probing jab that fell short by design, testing Chuck's reaction. The martial artist didn't flinch, didn't blink. His weight shifting subtly to his back foot, in preparation for a counter that didn't come. Not yet. "Come on, Chuck!" Tyson called out, loud enough for the front rows to hear. "Show me something!" He jabbed again, this time stepping in closer, narrowing the gap. Chuck sidestepped smoothly, maintaining the distance. His movement was economical, no wasted energy, no theatrical evasion, just efficient repositioning. 13-year-old Alex leaned forward, confused. "Why isn't Chuck doing anything, Dad?" His father, a former amateur boxer, recognized what was happening. "He is doing something, son. He's reading. Fighters like Norris, they're calculating." Tyson pressed forward again, this time throwing a combination jab, cross still at demonstration speed but with enough commitment to make it real. The punches sliced through empty air as Chuck slipped the first and pivoted away from the second. A smattering of applause acknowledged the clean evasion, but Tyson's supporters called out for more action. The boxer responded, picking up his pace slightly, cutting off the octagon more aggressively. His footwork, still remarkably quick for his age, forced Chuck to circle into a corner. "Nowhere to run now, kicker," Tyson announced, drawing another laugh from his supporters. With Chuck's back nearing the fence, Tyson launched another combination. This one faster, sharper, the punches whistling with legitimate intent. Chuck slipped the first, blocked the second with his forearm, then for the first time, countered. The kick came without telegraph or warning, a simple, economical side kick that caught Tyson in the midsection just as he reset from his combination. It wasn't thrown with full power, honoring the exhibition's parameters, but its precision and timing were undeniable. Tyson took a half step back, more surprised than hurt. A ripple of excitement ran through the martial arts enthusiasts in the crowd. Chuck immediately reset to his starting position, making no celebration or acknowledgement of landing the first solid blow. "Oh!" the announcer couldn't help himself. "Chuck Norris with the first clean strike of the exhibition." Tyson nodded, his grin returning half respect, half challenge. Okay. Not bad for a kicker." He resumed his stance, but with more focus now, the showmanship receding as the fighter's instinct awakened. They reset in the center of the octagon, circling again. This time, however, the energy had shifted. What had begun as entertainment was crystallizing into something more authentic, a genuine, if restrained, exchange between masters of different crafts. Tyson moved in again, his combinations coming in tighter clusters now. His famous speed, diminished by age but still remarkable, created problems that Chuck had to solve in fractions of seconds. The boxer pressed forward, cutting off angles, trying to pin Chuck against the cage, where his kicks would have no room to generate power. Chuck defended well, blocking when necessary, redirecting Tyson's energy when possible. But the pressure was real, forcing him to give ground incrementally. In the front row, Alex tugged his father's sleeve. "Tyson's winning. He's backing him up." "Maybe," his father replied. "But backing up isn't always losing. Sometimes it's just waiting." As if hearing the commentary, Chuck suddenly changed the pattern. Instead of continuing to circle away from Tyson's pressure, he stepped into it, not retreating but advancing at an angle that momentarily confused the boxer's rhythm. In that split-second opening, Chuck unleashed a lightning-fast combination of his own. A straight punch that caught Tyson on the shoulder, followed by a leg kick that swept across the boxer's thigh. Neither strike was thrown with fight-ending intention, but both landed clean. The speed of the exchange coming from the older of the two legends drew gasps from the crowd. Tyson nodded again, this time with no smile, just the recognition of a legitimate exchange. He reset, recalculated, then pressed forward again, this time more cautiously. The exhibition had found its rhythm now, Tyson pressing with boxing combinations, Chuck defending and countering with a mixed arsenal of strikes. Neither man was fighting at full intensity, but neither was merely performing either. They had found that rare middle ground where demonstration and competition blend into something authentic yet controlled. Up in the luxury boxes, former UFC champion Anderson Silva leaned forward, studying the exchange with professional interest. "Look at Chuck's eyes," he told his companions. "He's calculating everything: distance, timing, rhythm. This isn't an old man showing off. This is a master still in control of his craft. Down on the floor, the energy continued building. Tyson, growing slightly frustrated with Chuck's elusive movement, began putting more pepper into his combinations. A quick three-punch sequence jab, cross, hook, finally found its mark, the last punch catching Chuck on the shoulder as he turned. "Yes!" Tyson exclaimed, the competitor in him surfacing through the exhibitor's veneer. The blow, while not damaging, awakened something in Chuck as well. For the first time, a flicker of intensity crossed his face, not anger, but focus sharpening into intent. What followed surprised even the professional fighters watching from ringside. Chuck launched into a combination that belied his age, a straight punch to create space, followed by a spinning back kick that caught Tyson on the upper arm as the boxer raised his defense. The technique was executed with such clean precision that martial artists in the crowd rose to their feet, technical appreciation overriding partisan support. Tyson, genuinely surprised by the speed of the attack, took another step back. For the first time, the boxer looked at his opponent with complete fighting focus. No showmanship, no performance, just the predator's assessment of unexpected danger. The crowd sensed the shift immediately. What had begun as entertainment theater was transforming before their eyes into something rare and authentic, two aging but legitimate legends, testing each other not for show, but for the private knowledge that only comes in the crucible of combat. 1 minute remaining in the exhibition, the announcer called out, voice straining to be heard above the growing roar. Tyson, pride now fully engaged, pressed forward with renewed purpose. His combinations came faster, each punch thrown with deliberate targeting. He was no longer performing for the crowd. He was solving the puzzle that Chuck Norris presented, a puzzle of distance, timing, and unfamiliar angles. Chuck maintained his composure, but his counters came with increasing crispness. A checking kick to disrupt Tyson's advance. A straight punch that landed on the boxer's shoulder. A sweep that caught Tyson's lead leg and momentarily disrupted his balance. With 30 seconds remaining, Tyson committed fully to cutting off the octagon, determined not to let the exhibition end with him pursuing, but never capturing his target. He launched his most committed combination, yet jab, cross, hook, uppercut, a classic Tyson sequence, thrown with enough intention to remind everyone why he had once been the most feared puncher on the planet. Chuck slipped the jab, blocked the cross, but the hook caught him on the forearm, knocking him slightly off balance. As the uppercut came rising toward his chin, time seemed to slow for the martial artist. Decades of training collapsed into a single moment of decision. What happened next would be replayed in slow motion across social media within minutes, analyzed in fighting gyms for years, and remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. As Tyson's uppercut rose, Chuck executed a simultaneous counter that seemed to defy his age, a spinning heel kick that arced over the uppercut's path, its trajectory placing his foot directly in line with Tyson's jaw. But at the last microsecond, with precision that spoke to absolute control, Chuck pulled the kick, stopping it mere inches from Tyson's face as the boxer's uppercut similarly halted just short of Chuck's chin. For a heartbeat, they froze in that position, two lethal techniques suspended at their apex, neither man completing the potentially devastating strike. It was a moment of perfect mutual recognition, two masters acknowledging what could have happened while choosing restraint over dominance. The arena fell silent, breath held collectively, before erupting into the loudest cheer of the night. The electronic tones sounded, signaling the end of the 3-minute exhibition. Chuck immediately lowered his leg and stepped back, returning to neutral position. Tyson lowered his fist and straightened, the intensity in his eyes giving way to something more complex, surprise, respect, and the private recalibration that comes when long-held assumptions are challenged. The announcer bounded into the center of the octagon, voice barely containing his excitement. "Ladies and gentlemen, what an incredible demonstration of skill from two genuine legends. Let's hear it for Mike Tyson and Chuck Norris." The crowd's response was deafening, a standing ovation that swept through the arena like a wave. Phones remained raised, capturing the aftermath. As both men approached each other in the center of the mat, Tyson extended his gloved hands first. Chuck clasped them both in his own. No words passed between them that could be heard over the crowd's roar, but something significant was communicated in that handshake, a mutual acknowledgement that transcended the night's entertainment. In the front row, young Alex stood stunned, his perception visibly shifting. "Dad. That kick. He could have." His father nodded. "That's right, son. But the real power wasn't in throwing it. It was in choosing not to." As the two legends separated and moved toward their respective corners, the crowd continued its ovation. The other fighters who had been cleared from the octagon earlier now streamed back in, surrounding both men with congratulations and questions. Amidst the chaos, Tyson caught Chuck's eye one more time across the mat. The boxer tapped his own head and nodded a fighter's gesture of respect. Chuck returned the nod with characteristic economy. In that simple exchange, more was communicated than in all the hype and promotion leading up to the event. Beyond the spectacle, beyond the crowd's reaction, beyond even the technical exchange itself, something elemental had been acknowledged between two men who had spent their lives mastering the controlled application of violence. True power lies not in domination, but in discipline, and respect, once given, is infinitely more valuable than respect demanded. The exhibition was over, but its reverberations were just beginning. As Chuck and Tyson exited the octagon, they were immediately swarmed by their respective entourages. Production assistants and security formed protective corridors, guiding them toward the backstage area. The original event schedule had been thoroughly derailed. The exhibition's energy had created a new gravitational center around which the entire night now orbited. The announcer, trying to recapture control of the program, directed attention to the next scheduled segment. But the crowd remained fixated on the departing legends, their voices a continuous roll of excitement that undermined any attempt to move forward. Backstage, the energy was equally charged. Production staff huddled around monitors, reviewing footage of the exchange. Fighters who had witnessed it live gathered in small clusters, dissecting techniques and moments with professional appreciation. In a small preparation room off the main corridor, Chuck stood quietly as his longtime student Steve offered him water. The martial artist's breathing was measured, controlled, slightly elevated from the exertion but nowhere near taxed. "You all right, Sifu?" Steve asked, searching his teacher's face for signs of strain. Chuck nodded, taking a small sip of water. "Fine." He rotated his shoulder, where Tyson's hook had made partial contact. "He still hits like a freight train." Down the hall, in a larger dressing room, Tyson was considerably more animated. Surrounded by his entourage, the boxer paced energetically, replaying moments from the exchange with characteristic intensity. "Did you see that kick?" he exclaimed to no one in particular. "That old man is fast. Didn't even see it coming until it was right there." He pantomimed the spinning technique with obvious admiration. His earlier dismissiveness completely evaporated. His head trainer tried to calm him down. "You did good, Mike. Kept it controlled, but authentic." The crowd ate it up. But Tyson wasn't thinking about the crowd or the performance aspect anymore. Something more fundamental had been awakened. The fighter's eternal quest to understand, to solve, to master. "I need to watch that back. The way he creates distance, it's different. Not running, not afraid, just calculating. A production assistant knocked tentatively on the doorframe. "Mr. Tyson? The producer wanted me to check if you're still up for the panel discussion. It's scheduled next. But given what just happened..." Tyson waved impatiently. Yeah, I'll do whatever. Where's Chuck going to be?" "Mr. Norris is also confirmed for the panel," the assistant replied. Tyson nodded, suddenly more interested. "Good. Tell them I'm in." Back in the arena, the crowd's energy remained at peak level. The scheduled transition activities, highlight reels and sponsor messages barely registered as the audience buzzed with analysis and reaction. Social media was already exploding. Clips of the exhibition were being uploaded, shared, and commented upon in real time. Young Alex sat stunned beside his father, his worldview visibly recalibrating. "I thought Tyson was going to destroy him," he admitted quietly. "But Chuck, he was so calm, so in control." His father nodded. "That's the difference between Flash and Foundation, son. Tyson's always been spectacular. That's his gift and his burden. Norris built something different, something that lasts." "Could Chuck have knocked him out with that kick?" Alex asked. The question that was circulating through the entire arena. His father considered carefully. Maybe. But the real power wasn't in whether he could. It was in that he chose not to, that he had such perfect control, he could stop it exactly where he did. On the main floor, the production team was hastily reconfiguring the stage for the panel discussion. What had been planned as a routine Q&A was now charged with new significance. Extra security was positioned around the platform as staff anticipated far more audience engagement than originally expected. The announcer returned to center stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, take your seats. Up next, our Legends panel discussion, where our fighting icons will share insights from their remarkable careers." The crowd began settling, anticipation building for the next interaction between Tyson and Norris. What had been scheduled as a standard programming segment was now the most anticipated discussion of the night. Backstage, the green room was a hive of activity as panel participants prepared to go on. UFC champion Jon Jones watched the monitor showing the arena, shaking his head in amazement. "Man, I've been watching that kick on replay. The control to stop it right there? At his age? That's some next-level mastery." Beside him, boxing champion Claressa Shields nodded. Tyson wasn't playing either. Those punches had heat on them. This wasn't just some choreographed demo. "That's what made it real," Jones replied. "You can't fake that kind of exchange." That was two killers recognizing each other. The production manager entered, clipboard in hand. 5 minutes to panel. Everyone. We'll bring you out one at a time, save Tyson and Norris for last. Given what just happened, the moderators adjusting the questions to address the exhibition. Jones grinned. Smart move. That's all anyone wants to talk about anyway. In the arena, the lights dimmed again as the panel stage was illuminated. 7 chairs were arranged in a semicircle, with the moderator's position in the center. A highlight reel began playing on the massive screens, moments from each panelist's career, building toward their introduction. The crowd roared as each fighter was introduced and took their place. Jon Jones, Claressa Shields, Anderson Silva, Amanda Nunes, champions across disciplines and eras. But the energy noticeably intensified when the announcer reached the final introductions. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Chuck Norris." The martial artist emerged from the side entrance, acknowledging the ovation with the same measured composure he'd shown throughout the night. He took his seat without theatrics, nodding to the other panelists with genuine respect. And finally, the announcer's voice stretched the moment. The legendary Mike Tyson. The boxer bounded onto the stage with characteristic energy, playing to the crowd, raising his fists to thunderous applause. But there was something different in his demeanor now, a subtle shift that the more perceptive audience members noticed immediately. The theatrical swagger remained, but his eyes kept returning to Chuck Norris with unmistakable curiosity and reassessment. Tyson took his seat, the final chair positioned directly beside Chuck. As he settled, he leaned over and said something inaudible to the martial artist. Chuck nodded once, the ghost of a smile briefly crossing his face. The moderator, ESPN's veteran combat sports analyst Ariel Helwani, moved to the center position, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen, what a night it's been already. I think it's safe to say we've witnessed something truly historic, something that wasn't on the program but might just be what everyone remembers from legends and legacies." The crowd roared in agreement. "So," Helwani continued, "I think we have to address the elephant in the room right away." He turned toward Tyson and Norris. "Mike, you started with some playful comments about Chuck being just a kicker. That escalated into quite possibly the most unexpected exhibition in combat sports history. What was going through your mind during that exchange?" Tyson leaned forward, his distinctive voice carrying easily through the microphone. "Man, I was just having fun at first, you know. That's what I do. I talk, I entertain." He glanced sideways at Chuck. "But then it got real. When we got in there, that wasn't just some old karate guy moving around. That was a real fighter with real skills." The audience applauded the acknowledgement. "I've been hit by the best," Tyson continued, warming to his subject. "I know what real power and real technique feel like. What Chuck showed in there," he shook his head appreciatively, "that was the real deal. That kick? Man, I never even saw it coming until it was right there." Helwani turned to Chuck. "And Chuck, you've remained pretty quiet throughout this. What was your perspective on what happened out there?" Chuck adjusted his microphone, his response measured and thoughtful. "I didn't come here looking to prove anything. At my age, you stop needing that kind of validation." He paused. "But there are some lessons that never get old. About respect. About understanding that different paths can lead to the same destination." He glanced at Tyson without animosity. "Mike is one of the greatest fighters ever. What he accomplished in boxing is legendary. I have nothing but respect for that. But there's a difference between respecting someone's accomplishments and allowing misconceptions to stand unchallenged." The arena had fallen silent, hanging on every word. "When someone dismisses what you've spent your life mastering," Chuck continued, "you have a choice. You can get angry. You can walk away. Or you can simply demonstrate the truth. Quietly and clearly." The response drew a wave of applause, especially from the martial arts sections of the crowd. Young Alex, still processing what he'd witnessed, nudged his father. "Dad, I think I get it now." His father raised an eyebrow. "Get what?" Why, Chuck didn't get mad when Tyson made fun of him. He didn't need to. He knew what he could do. On stage, Helwani directed the conversation toward the technical aspects. "Mike, as a boxer, what surprised you most about facing someone from Chuck's background?" Tyson leaned forward, suddenly more analytical than performative. "The distance. In boxing, we operate in certain ranges, certain rhythms. Chuck, he manipulates distance differently. He's never quite where you expect him to be." Tyson mimicked a punching motion. "I'd throw thinking I had the range perfect, and somehow he'd be just outside it." He continued, growing more animated. "And that kick? That caught me in the body? Didn't even see it coming. No telegraph, no warning. Just boom, there it was. In boxing, there's always some tell. Some weight shift you can read. But his kick? Nothing. Chuck nodded slightly, acknowledging the technical observation without pride. John Jones leaned into his microphone. That's what makes fighting across disciplines so challenging. The rhythm is different. The distance is different. What Mike just described, that's why MMA evolved the way it did. You have to solve all those puzzles simultaneously. Clarissa Shields added her perspective. As a boxer, watching what happened out there was eye-opening. Mike is right about the distance management. Chuck was never playing Mike's game, he was forcing Mike to play his. The discussion continued, weaving between technical analysis and philosophical reflection. The other panelists contributed their insights, but the gravity of the conversation kept returning to the unexpected exchange between the two legends. Midway through the panel, Helwani opened the floor to audience questions. Security staff positioned themselves with microphones throughout the arena. The first question came from a young martial arts student near the front. "This is for Chuck Norris," the teenager said, voice wavering slightly with nervousness. In that final exchange, when both of you stopped your techniques just short, was that planned, or did that just happen in the moment? Chuck considered the question carefully. Nothing was planned. In 40 years of training, what you're developing is not a series of moves, but instincts. The decision to stop that kick wasn't conscious in the traditional sense. It was the culmination of decades of practice, of learning when to strike and when to show restraint. Tyson nodded emphatically. Same here, nothing choreographed. That was just two fighters reading each other in real time. He turned toward Chuck. And I gotta say, the control to stop that kick right there? At his age? That's some next-level mastery, man. Most guys half his age couldn't do that. Another question came from the opposite side of the arena. A middle-aged boxing coach. "Mike, after what happened tonight, do you still think one good punch beats any kick?" The crowd collectively held its breath, sensing the question's provocative nature. Tyson's famous grin spread across his face, but his answer surprised many. "Look, I'm always going to believe in these." He raised his fist to scattered cheers. "That's my art, my discipline. But what I saw tonight," he glanced at Chuck, "makes me think it's not about the technique. It's about the man behind it." Chuck's kicks were dangerous, not because kicks are better than punches, but because of how he's mastered them, the timing, the precision. He leaned forward, suddenly philosophical in the way only Tyson could be raw and unfiltered. In fighting, there's no better technique. There's only what you've truly mastered versus what you haven't. Chuck mastered his art. I mastered mine. The real question isn't which is better, it's which fighter has gone deeper into their practice. The response drew appreciative applause from fighters and fans across disciplines. On stage, Chuck nodded in agreement. The mutual respect between the two legends, now evident to everyone. As the panel continued, the production team monitored social media feeds where the exhibition was exploding across platforms. Clips were being shared millions of times, with comments, sections filled with debate and analysis. What had begun as an unscripted moment had transformed into the most significant combat sports crossover event in recent memory. In the arena's production booth, the executive producer spoke urgently into her headset. "We need to get them together for a one-on-one interview after this. This is gold, absolute gold." Down in the front row, Alex watched the panel with newfound appreciation, his perspective visibly expanding beyond his initial hero worship of Tyson. "Do you think they'll ever do it again, Dad? A real fight?" His father shook his head. "That wasn't about fighting, son. It was about something more important." "What?" "Truth. When someone truly knows their value, they don't need to shout about it. They can just show it. Quietly and with dignity. He nodded toward Chuck on the stage. That's what you just witnessed. Not a fight, a lesson. As the panel neared its conclusion, Helwani asked each participant for their final thoughts on the night's unexpected turn. When he reached Tyson, the boxer had grown uncharacteristically reflective. You know, I came up in an era where talking big was part of the game, making noise, creating fear. That was my edge. He looked toward Chuck. But there's another kind of strength that doesn't need all that. The kind that's so secure, it doesn't need to announce itself. He extended a hand toward Chuck. I got nothing but respect for that. Sometimes the quietest guys in the room are the ones you should worry about most. Chuck accepted the handshake with characteristic composure. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of decades of discipline. In martial arts, we have a saying, the oak that bends in the storm survives longer than the one that stands rigid. Strength isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself. The arena erupted in applause as the two legends rose together, their initial confrontation having transformed into something far more valuable, a moment of genuine mutual recognition that transcended their different paths. As they exited the stage together, Tyson's arm draped casually over Chuck's shoulder. The contrast between them remained striking. One, all kinetic energy and emotion. The other, stillness and control. Yet in that moment, their fundamental similarity became clear to everyone watching beneath the different exteriors. Both men shared the same core truth. Authentic mastery requires no validation beyond itself. And sometimes, the most powerful statement is the one delivered without words. The morning after the exhibition, Las Vegas buzzed with electricity that had nothing to do with its famous neon. In hotel lobbies, casino floors, and breakfast cafes, conversation centered on one topic only: the unexpected confrontation between Mike Tyson and Chuck Norris. At the MGM Grand's main restaurant, screens played continuous coverage of the moment, sports networks running frame-by-frame analysis of the techniques, morning shows debating the cultural significance, social media metrics showing the exponential spread of clips across platforms. Legends clash. Tyson and Norris redefine. Respect in unexpected showdown. Read the ESPN headline. The kick scene around the world. How Chuck Norris silenced boxing's most feared voice, declared the martial arts websites. Tyson meets his match. Iron Mike acknowledges Norris's mastery after exhibition surprise. Announced the boxing portals. In a private dining room off the main floor, event organizers huddled with network executives. Their initial panic over the program's derailment having transformed into opportunistic excitement. The overnight numbers are insane, the network VP announced, sliding a tablet across the table. Social media engagement is 5 times what we projected for the entire event. The clips have been viewed over 50 million times already. The lead producer nodded, scrolling through the metrics. We're getting calls from sponsors who weren't even part of the original package. They want in now, whatever we're planning next. And what exactly are we planning next? Asked the event coordinator, voicing the question on everyone's mind. The VP leaned forward. We need to capitalize on this momentum. A rematch is the obvious play. But I'm not sure that's what this moment calls for. Agreed, the producer replied. This wasn't about competition, it was about something deeper. The audience responded to the authenticity, the mutual respect that developed. We need to build on that narrative. Across town, in a modest diner away from the Strip, young Alex sat with his father over breakfast, still processing what he'd witnessed. The boy pushed scrambled eggs around his plate, lost in thought. You're quiet this morning, his father observed. Alex looked up. I keep thinking about what happened. About Chuck and Tyson. What about them? I came to see Tyson dominate everyone. That's what I expected. What I wanted to see. He set his fork down. But Chuck, he never tried to dominate. He just existed in his skill. And that was more powerful somehow. His father nodded, recognizing the significance of his son's observation. That's a valuable lesson to learn early, Alex. True mastery doesn't need to announce itself. Is that why you brought me? So I'd learn that? His father smiled. I brought you because you wanted to see Mike Tyson, the lesson that was just lucky timing. Meanwhile, at the Fighter Hotel, the aftermath continued unfolding in more private settings. In Chuck Norris's suite, the martial artist moved through his morning routine with the same disciplined attention he brought to everything. Despite the previous night's exertion, he performed his daily exercises with mechanical precision, a regimen he had maintained for over 50 years. His student Steve sat nearby, monitoring social media on his tablet. Sifu, you're trending in countries that probably don't even get American broadcasts. This thing has gone completely global. Chuck continued his movements without interruption. How's Mike handling it? From what I've seen, surprisingly well. He's been giving interviews all morning, talking about how much he respects your skills. Very different tone from last night's intro. Chuck completed his sequence and reached for a towel. Good. This was never about embarrassing anyone. Just about truth. Steve set the tablet down. The network wants to know if you'd consider a follow-up, not another exhibition, more like a joint seminar. You and Tyson breaking down what happened, teaching principles from your respective disciplines. For the first time that morning, Chuck paused, considering. That has merit. Not as spectacle, but as education. 20 floors below, in a considerably more animated scene, Tyson held court in his suite's living room. His entourage filled the space, along with network representatives and a documentary crew that had been following the boxing legend for an upcoming film. And then he throws this kick that comes out of nowhere, Tyson was saying, pantomiming the movement with characteristic energy. No telegraph. No warning. If he'd wanted to, that thing could have taken my head clean off. Rather than diminishing him, the acknowledgement seemed to energize Tyson. He had always possessed the fighter's appreciation for authentic skill, his respect for Chuck's abilities enhancing rather than threatening his own legendary status. His manager approached, phone in hand. Mike, I've got the network VP on the line. They want to discuss next steps. This thing is blowing up beyond anyone's expectations. Tyson took the phone, his expression shifting to business mode. Talk to me. As he listened, his face registered increasing interest. A breakdown seminar? Me and Chuck together, showing the techniques, explaining the principles? He nodded. I like that. Not another fight that would cheapen what happened. But teaching together? That's honoring it. He listened further, then laughed. Tell Chuck. I said yes. But this time, I want him to teach me that kick properly. By midday, the ripples had expanded beyond Las Vegas. In dojos, boxing gyms, and MMA academies across the country, instructors used clips from the exhibition as teaching moments. The technical aspects provided valuable lessons, but the underlying message resonated even more deeply. At a mixed martial arts gym in Chicago, a veteran coach gathered his fighters around a screen. Watch this final exchange again, frame by frame. See how both men could have landed devastating blows, but chose control instead? That's the mark of true masters. Not what they can do to an opponent, but what they choose not to do. In a traditional karate dojo in Seattle, a sensei addressed her students after viewing the clips. Chuck Norris demonstrated something last night that I've been trying to teach for years. Power without control is just violence. Control without power is just movement. The mastery is in uniting, both having the capacity to end the fight, but the discipline to calibrate your response precisely. At a boxing gym in Brooklyn, a trainer showed his young fighters the footage. Everyone talks about Tyson's power, and it's legendary. But look at his footwork here. How he adjusts to an unfamiliar situation. That's the mark of a complete fighter. Not just sticking to what you know, but adapting to what you don't. Back in Las Vegas, the exhibition's impact continued materializing in unexpected ways. At the UFC Performance Institute, a hastily organized panel of fighters and coaches gathered to analyze the technical aspects of the exchange. What we witnessed was a masterclass in cross-disciplinary problem-solving, explained former champion Daniel Cormier. Tyson trying to close distance using boxing principles. Norris maintaining space using karate fundamentals. It's exactly the puzzle that early MMA was built around. UFC CEO Dana White, never one to miss a promotional opportunity, had already been on 3 morning shows discussing the implications. Last night reminded everyone why fighting captivates us at a primal level. It's not just about violence, it's about human problem-solving at its most immediate and honest. By afternoon, the narrative had expanded beyond sports into broader cultural analysis. On news programs and talk shows, commentators examined what had resonated so deeply with audiences worldwide. What we saw wasn't just an athletic exhibition, noted a cultural critic on CNN. It was a moment that cut through our cynicism about staged spectacles. In an era where so much feels manufactured for social media, the authenticity of that exchange, the genuine respect that developed between these two legends, felt almost revolutionary. At the Las Vegas Convention Center, the remainder of the Legends and Legacies event continued, but with a transformed energy. Attendance had doubled overnight, as fans scrambled for tickets, hoping to witness potential follow-up interactions between the two icons. The event's centerpiece that afternoon was a signing session, where fighters met fans and signed memorabilia. The line for Tyson had always been expected to stretch around the hall, but now, Chuck's line matched it, winding through the convention center as fans of all ages waited for a moment with the martial arts legend. Midway through the session, a production assistant approached Chuck's table. "Mr. Norris, Mike Tyson is asking if you'd be willing to do a joint signing for the last 30 minutes. Same table, together." Chuck considered briefly, then nodded. "Tell Mike I'd be honored." When announced over the public address system, the joint signing created a near frenzy. Security scrambled to reconfigure the space as fans from both lines merged into a single massive queue. As Tyson took his seat beside Chuck, he leaned over with his characteristic grin. "Look what we started, man. All this from one little exhibition." Chuck allowed himself a rare public smile. "It's not about what we did, it's about what it meant to people." Tyson nodded. Suddenly philosophical. "Truth. In fighting, you can't fake it. That's why people connected. Too much fake stuff out there now. What we did, that was real." Together, they began signing memorabilia photos from the previous night already printed and distributed, showing their final frozen moment of mutual respect. Many fans requested dual signatures, creating instant collector's items that would appreciate in value for decades. Toward the end of the line, Alex and his father finally reached the table. The boy, who had entered the arena the previous day wearing a Tyson t-shirt, now stood silent with nervous admiration for both men. "Who should I make it out to, young man?" Tyson asked, pen poised over a photo. "Alex," the boy managed. "But, can I ask you both a question?" The legends exchanged glances, then nodded. "How do you know when you're really strong? Like, not just looking strong to other people, but actually being strong?" The question, in its childlike directness, cut to the heart of everything the previous night had demonstrated. Tyson and Chuck both paused, recognizing its significance. Tyson spoke first. His answer, surprisingly gentle. "That's the best question we've heard all day, Alex. For me, I spent a lot of years confusing fear with respect. I thought if people were scared of me, that meant I was strong." He glanced at Chuck. "But that's not real strength. That's just intimidation." Chuck nodded, then addressed the boy directly. "Real strength is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself constantly. It shows itself in moments of choice when you could dominate, but choose restraint instead." Tyson leaned forward. "You know you're really strong when you no longer need others to confirm it for you, when you can stand in your truth without shouting about it." Alex absorbed their words with solemn concentration, then nodded. "Thank you." He looked down at his Tyson t-shirt, then back up at both men. "I think I need a new shirt. One with both of you on it." The exchange, small as it was, encapsulated the broader impact rippling outward from the previous night's exhibition. Beyond the spectacle, beyond the techniques, beyond even the mutual respect between legends, something fundamental had been demonstrated about the nature of true mastery and authentic strength. And in gyms and dojos, living rooms and classrooms, that lesson would continue resonating long after the bright lights of Las Vegas had dimmed on the event itself. Because some demonstrations of truth require no words to explain, only the willingness to see what is being shown. 3 days after the exhibition, the media frenzy showed no signs of abating. What had begun as an unscripted moment in a routine promotional event had crystallized into something approaching legend status, dissected, analyzed, and celebrated across platforms and perspectives. In his hotel suite, Chuck Norris packed methodically, preparing for his departure. Unlike many celebrities who extended their Las Vegas stays for the accompanying nightlife, Chuck operated on the same disciplined schedule he'd maintained for decades. Event concluded. Commitments fulfilled, time to return home. A knock at the door interrupted his packing. His student Steve entered with a final batch of media requests. "These just came in, Sifu. The major networks are still asking for exclusive interviews. ESPN wants to do a special breakdown episode. Netflix is talking about a documentary." Chuck continued folding a shirt with precise movements. "The network special we agreed to is sufficient. The rest," he shook his head, "would just be repetition." Steve had expected this response. Knowing his teacher's aversion to publicity for its own sake. "There's one more, different from the others." He handed over a handwritten note. From Tyson. Delivered by his personal assistant. Not through channels. Chuck paused, taking the note with interest. He read it twice, then placed it carefully on the desk. "Tell the car service, we'll be delayed an hour. And call Mike's assistant back. Tell him I accept." Across the strip at Tyson's palatial suite, the boxer's pre-departure atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Where Chuck's room was ordered and quiet, Tyson's buzzed with activity assistants, packing, managers on phones, friends and hangers-on, creating a constant hum of conversation and movement. Tyson himself sat on the balcony, somewhat removed from the chaos, watching the Las Vegas skyline with uncharacteristic stillness. His longtime friend and head of security approached cautiously, recognizing the rare moment of reflection. "Chuck's team called back," he said. "He's agreed to meet." Tyson nodded, still gazing outward. "Good. Have the car ready in 30. You sure you don't want me to come along?" Tyson shook his head. "No entourage, no cameras, just us." His friend hesitated. "That's not your usual approach." "Nothing about this is usual," Tyson replied, finally turning to face him. "That's the whole point." An hour later, In a private room at an unassuming restaurant well away from the strip, the two legends sat across from each other. No entourages, no media, no phones, just two men who had spent their lives mastering their respective disciplines, now sharing a quiet meal and conversation. "I appreciate you agreeing to meet like this," Tyson began. His famous intensity mellowed into something more contemplative. "Away from all the noise." Chuck nodded. "It's refreshing." "That's one word for it," Tyson chuckled. "I'm not known for seeking quiet corners." "We all contain contradictions," Chuck replied simply. They ordered Chuck's selections practical and nutrition-focused, Tyson's more indulgent but still mindful of his training regimen. As the waiter departed, a comfortable silence settled between them. The ease of two men who no longer needed to prove anything to each other. Tyson broke the silence first. "I've been thinking about what happened. Not just the exhibition, but everything after. The reaction. Why it connected with so many people." Chuck waited, allowing him to continue. "All my life, I've been defined by destruction," Tyson continued. "Breaking things. Breaking people. Being feared." He rotated his water glass slowly. "Even when I tried to be something else, that shadow followed me." Mike Tyson. The destroyer. "And now?" Chuck prompted quietly. "Now I'm thinking about what you showed in there. Not just the technical skill, though, that was eye-opening, but the control, the restraint." Tyson looked up. "That kick could have connected. We both know it. But you chose otherwise." Chuck considered his response carefully. "Power without control is just chaos. Control without power is just theory. Finding the balance, that's the work of a lifetime." Tyson nodded, absorbing the words. "In boxing, they teach us to finish. When you have someone hurt, you end it. No mercy, no hesitation." His voice carried no boastfulness now, just honest reflection. "But what you did, stopping that kick right there, that required more mastery than landing it." "Different philosophies," Chuck acknowledged, "both valid in their contexts." "But yours ages better," Tyson said with surprising insight. "Your approach, you can still demonstrate it at 70. Plus, mine," he gestured to himself, "has an expiration date. Raw power fades. Technique endures." Chuck smiled slightly. "Everything has its season. Your explosiveness in your prime, that was its own kind of artistry. Unrepeatable. Unique." They paused as their food arrived, each man falling into the rhythms of their respective disciplines even in this mundane activity. Tyson's movements more dynamic and variable, Chuck's measured and precise. "The network wants us to do this breakdown special together," Tyson said after a few bites. "Teaching principles from boxing and karate, analyzing what happened in the exhibition." "I agreed to it," Chuck confirmed. "With parameters. Not about spectacle." Tyson nodded. "About substance." "Exactly." Tyson leaned forward slightly. "I want to learn that kick. The one you nearly landed. Not for show, for understanding." Chuck studied him, gauging the sincerity of the request. What he saw satisfied him. "And I've always appreciated the mechanics of your hook, the way you generate power from the ground up." "Exchange of knowledge," Tyson grinned. "Old school." "The oldest school," Chuck agreed. "How it's been done for centuries." As they continued their meal, the conversation shifted between technical discussions of fighting principles and broader philosophical reflections. Despite their different paths and personas, they discovered surprising alignment in their fundamental understandings of combat and discipline. "People think fighting is about anger," Tyson observed. "It's not. It's about clarity. Seeing exactly what is, not what you wish was there. Chuck nodded. The opponent is never just the other person. It's always yourself first. Your fears, your impatience, your ego. Man, if someone had explained it to me that way when I was coming up, Tyson shook his head, might have saved me some trouble. We all find our path at different times, Chuck replied. The journey doesn't follow a standard timeline. As they finished their meal, Tyson gestured to the waiter for the check. My treat. Consider it payment for the education you gave me in that octagon. Chuck accepted with a gracious nod. Then the next one is on me. Outside the restaurant, away from cameras and public eyes, they stood for a moment in the desert evening air. The conversation had created a connection. Neither had anticipated not friendship exactly, but a mutual recognition that transcended their public personas. What happens next? Tyson asked. After all this dies down? Back to normal life? Chuck considered. Normal changes. It adapts to new understandings. Philosophical as always. Tyson laughed. Then, more seriously. That kid at the signing, Alex. His question stuck with me. About knowing when you're really strong. A perceptive question. Chuck agreed. I'm still figuring out my answer. Tyson admitted. Spent most of my life getting it wrong, I think. The best questions don't have fixed answers, Chuck replied. They evolve as we do. They shook hands, a simple gesture loaded with newfound meaning. No entourages, no cameras, no performance. Just two masters acknowledging each other's journey. Until the special then, Tyson said. Chuck nodded. Until then. As they parted ways, returning to their vastly different lives and routines, something significant had been exchanged, not just between them, but within each. The exhibition had created a moment of truth. This private meeting had allowed that truth to deepen into understanding. For Chuck, it reinforced a philosophy he had lived by for decades. True strength requires no external validation. For Tyson, it offered a new perspective on his own legacy. That his greatest impact might come not from destruction, but from transformation and growth. And for both, it provided a rare opportunity that even legends seldom experience. The chance to be seen and understood beyond the confines of their public narratives. As the Las Vegas lights illuminated the darkening desert sky, they carried with them different lessons from the same encounter, proof that even at the pinnacle of mastery, the learning never truly ends. 6 weeks later, the network special Disciplines of Mastery, Tyson and Norris, aired to record viewership. Unlike typical sports programming focused on competition, the special centered on principles and philosophy, each legend breaking down their approach to fighting and life, interspersed with analysis of their exhibition. The format was simple yet powerful. Tyson and Chuck seated together in a studio, viewing footage of their encounter with a moderator guiding their commentary. Between segments, each demonstrated core techniques from their disciplines, occasionally teaching elements to the other in a genuine exchange of knowledge. In living rooms across the country, people gathered to watch not just fighting enthusiasts, but viewers drawn to the deeper narrative. Parents sat with children, coaches with athletes, all recognizing that something beyond sports was being communicated. In Phoenix, 13-year-old Alex hosted a viewing party for his martial arts classmates. The boys watched with unusual focus as the screen showed the final moment of the exhibition in slow motion. Watch how Chuck stops the kick right there. Perfect control, Alex pointed out. On screen, Chuck explained. The difficulty isn't in generating power. It's in harnessing it, knowing exactly how much to deploy and when to withhold. Tyson nodded beside him. In boxing, we're taught to finish. But what Chuck showed here, this level of control, that's a different kind of mastery. Alex's father watched his son's face, the concentration, the absorption of something beyond mere technique. 6 weeks earlier, the boy had entered that Las Vegas arena idolizing power and dominance. Now he studied control and restraint with equal fascination. In Chicago, veteran boxing trainer Maurice Washington hosted his own viewing with his fighters. The old coach recognized the value in cross-disciplinary understanding. "Pay attention," he told his boxers as Tyson demonstrated his combination work. "It's not just about the punches. Watch his feet, his hips, his shoulders, everything connected." "On screen," Tyson explained. "Power comes from the ground, up through the legs, hips, torso, shoulders, and finally the fist. Most fighters focus on the end point, but the foundation is where it starts." Chuck nodded. "That's where our disciplines align. In karate, we call it kaim, focusing all the body's energy to a single point. Different technique, same principle." The special concluded with something few would have predicted. Chuck teaching Tyson the spinning heel kick that had nearly connected in their exhibition, while Tyson guided Chuck through his famous peekaboo-style defense. The image of these two legends exchanging knowledge carried symbolic weight beyond the techniques themselves. "Perfect," Chuck nodded, as Tyson executed a measured version of the kick. "Notice how the power comes from the rotation, not from forcing it." Tyson repeated the movement with surprising fluidity. "It's like the uppercut. The force rises through the body naturally if you don't interrupt it." Chuck smiled slightly. Different vocabularies for the same principles. 6 months after the broadcast, the ripples continued spreading outward in profound ways. In Philadelphia, a community center struggling with youth violence launched Discipline Beyond Dominance, combining boxing with martial arts philosophy. The waiting list stretched for months as young people sought something deeper than mere physical techniques. Maurice Washington had incorporated elements from Chuck's approach into his fighters' training. "I've been teaching boxing for 30 years, he explained to a reporter. "But what that exhibition showed me was that there's always more to learn, always another perspective to consider." In academic circles, the exhibition had become a case study in conflict resolution. A professor at UCLA had written a paper titled "The Tyson Norris Paradox: How Controlled Confrontation Builds Understanding," examining how structured but genuine exchange created space for meaningful connection across different philosophies. And in Phoenix, Alex had made a decision that surprised his parents. After years of following boxing exclusively, he had joined a karate academy while continuing his boxing training. "Why both?" his father asked, curious rather than disapproving. "Because neither one is the whole picture," Alex replied with newfound certainty. Chuck knew how to punch. Tyson learned how to kick. The best fighters understand everything. His father nodded, recognizing the wisdom. Balance in all things. 1 year after the exhibition, a small but significant gathering took place at a community center in Las Vegas, the same city where the unexpected confrontation had occurred, but far removed from the spectacle of the Strip. The event, titled Principles of Mastery, brought together 50 instructors from various fighting disciplines, not for competition, but for collaborative learning. At the center stood Tyson and Chuck, united in their commitment to transmitting deeper principles to the next generation. "We've created this summit," Chuck explained, "because what happened last year revealed something important, that beneath our different techniques lie universal principles that transcend style or system." Tyson nodded. "For too long, we've been segmented. Boxers look down on kickers. Grapplers dismiss strikers. But the truth is, we're all studying the same reality from different angles." On the final day, a special group of students was invited. Not champions, but young people from at-risk backgrounds who had found purpose through martial arts. Among them was Alex, selected based on an essay about how the exhibition had changed his perspective on strength. The techniques are just tools, Chuck explained to the attentive group. What matters is the character you develop through their practice. Tyson, who had once embodied unbridled aggression, spoke with surprising gentleness. Fighting taught me about consequences, that every action creates a reaction. Took me a long time to apply that wisdom beyond the ring, but that's the real lesson. As the students departed, Tyson and Chuck remained behind, their unlikely partnership having evolved into something neither could have anticipated. "Think we made a difference?" Tyson asked. "To some," Chuck replied. "That's all we can hope for." "Not a bad legacy," Tyson reflected. "Beyond the championships, beyond the knockouts and kicks. The true legacy isn't what we leave behind," Chuck said. "It's what continues growing after we're gone. Because some lessons cannot be taught through words alone. They must be demonstrated through lived example, through the quiet confidence that comes not from dominating others, but from mastering oneself. And in that truth lies the essence of strength that endures. Not in the force of the blow delivered, but in the wisdom of knowing when to withhold it." Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch, and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.